Hello, very beautiful community. Vladimir Putin, the tyrant in the Kremlin, has finally spoken out about Greenland. And this is his statement. But let me show you another Putin clip first, or at least just give you a sense of it, because this other clip is the one that's doing the rounds. And this is in fact a statement by Putin from March 2025. So notice this phenomenon, that big accounts say breaking and attach a video that deceives you into thinking that it's fresh, that's actually months and sometimes even years old. So be watchful of that. I can see, so many thousands of people falling for that every day. This statement from March, however, is not unimportant. So rather than playing it, I'll just give you a sense of what Putin said. Putin said, look, in the 19th century, when we sold Alaska to the United States, the acquisition of Alaska was unpopular domestically. It was mocked as an icebox, as a reservation for polar bears that was relatively useless. But look at how America thinks of Alaska now. It's an indispensable part of the country. So understand the difference between local reception, I'm very much paraphrasing Putin, and historical reception. And he's implying that's how you've got to think about a potential US acquisition of Greenland. That's how you've got to think about my acquisition of Crimea and parts of Ukraine. You have to reckon more with people, what people think if you live in a mock democracy, as Putin would think of the United States. But fundamentally, contemporaneous reaction is an inconvenience, and only the historical record matters. And the historical record says, if you engaged in significant gathering of lands, that's good, and it's going to be normalized by history. So this is not just a bit of political technology on Putin's part. He's actually saying something he sincerely believes. And it's a powerful political intervention, in part also because Putin at least partly has a point about how history absorbs territorial acquisition, whether it's popular or not at the time. Let's now react to what Putin's come up with recently. There we go. So this is his latest statement, and this is what you need to be watching in the last 24 hours. The other video is old. Let's rock and roll. Now, about Greenland. This is something that does not concern us at all, what happens in Greenland. But we have experience of the resolution of similar problems with the United States. In the 19th century, I think in 1867, as we all know, Russia sold Alaska to the United States. And the United States bought Alaska from us. And if memory does not deceive me, the total area of Alaska is 1,717,000 square kilometers. And the United States bought Alaska from us for $7.2 million American dollars. You should check this, but roughly that's what it was, I think. And in today's prices, accounting for inflation over this multiplicity of decades, this number would be about $158 million. These conversions are hysterically inappropriate. And the total area of Greenland is a bit bigger. I think 2,166,000 square kilometers with a bit of extra on top. So in total, this is a difference of 450 to 449,000 square kilometers. So if we compare all of this, then the price for Greenland should now be $250 million. If we compare it in terms of the price of gold, then it would be around $1 billion US. But let me tell you, I'm not worried about the United States pulling off a number like that, being able to afford it. And Denmark and the United States themselves have experience of this kind. In 1917, Denmark sold, the United States bought the Virgin Islands. As a matter of fact, Denmark has always treated Greenland as a colony and treated Greenland harshly and cruelly. But that is a matter of a different kind, which quite frankly is of no interest to anybody. But we are quite definitely unaffected by this, and I'm sure they will work this out between themselves. So, give me a score for my running translation, beautiful community. Let's talk about this. What the hell is the tyrant in the Kremlin doing? Talking about 1,743.9325 square kilometers, which is 44 trillion bazillion thousand 0.125678 kilometers bigger and smaller than the other 400 trillion 0.4 triple bazillion 0.932 kilometers. What is it? What the hell is? Why did he just give us all these numbers? Putin is enormously legalistic in his psychology, and he enormously cares about detail. And this is not disconnected from his awareness that he is running a mafia-like regime. So it's a very important tool of normalization for Putin to say, you know, I'm doing that and this action, which might be perceived as illegitimate, but here I go couching it all in technocratic, bureaucratic speak that sort of normalizes it, right? I could start, boiling people in the streets in cauldrons, but I'm going to give you statistics about the, value of the metals from which the cauldrons are made and so on. So that's both something that's very effective for Putin. He uses it as a kind of legitimation facade, but also he is genuinely drawn to that way of speaking and that way of thinking. And a good way to consider how that sits in him is that this is actually Putin trying to legitimate his actions not to the world, but to himself. And not because he's in some kind of existential crisis about doing things he thinks are wrong. He thinks what he's doing is absolutely right. And he even now does not regret the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. However, to take himself fully seriously, in historical terms, he has to couch his actions, his thoughts, his aspirations in detail and in bureaucratic speak. And what he's doing by extension, when he talks about the United States and Greenland, is sort of applying this layer of detail and legalistic veneer onto the actions of the United States. Because what are we talking about? We're talking about Trump having wanted to gobble up Greenland. And Putin begins the discussion of the issue by giving us numbers and numbers and numbers and numbers and numbers. So this is about normalization. This is about the sort of conveyance of a sort of quite erratic monarchist, mafia, bullyish act on Trump's part into sort of appropriate relations that come with all the detail and all the bureaucracy and all the generalistic justifications of what's actually being done that legitimate action requires. So he's applying this sort of veneer in which he washes himself for himself onto Trump. Now, it's very important that the Kremlin likes to push this anti-colonial story. I mean, Putin is not wrong about all kinds of unlovely Danish practices in Greenland historically. But the reason he is mentioning it is because a part of the global justification, the global normalization of Putin's invasion of Ukraine is the idea that there's Russian imperialism perhaps, but it's a kind of defensive imperialism, it's sort of pushing back against the projection of US imperial power, and therefore, who knows, how to weigh that. It's, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. That's important for Putin. What's curious is the Kremlin are never systematic about this. They very rarely engage systematic energy in thinking about how to influence what caricaturally you might call the global left. They spend much more time trying to influence the authoritarian right. So actually missing a beat there to some degree, but at least they vaguely gesture in a direction from time to time, and Putin has just done that. So what can we take away from this? We can take away from this a kind of unlovely normalization of what we would call, hyper-liberal, hyper-neoliberal actions that are about the thought that might's right and everything that's out there can either be bought or acquired through duress or violence. And if you're in a position to grab something by any of these means, you should do it. And Putin is normalizing that via the application of all of this sort of pedantic detail. I robbed my neighbor's flat. What do I have to say about it? Well, if you think about it, I mean, there's quite. I mean, you'd think it's not that big. You'd think it's sort of 46 square meters, but it's got a veranda. And so we're sort of looking at 58.2 square meters. And it's underfloor heating there. The heating wasn't on when I broke in. So in terms of the heating, we're really talking about a temperature in that property, about 17 degrees Celsius, maybe pushing 17. And I would have to check that, but that's roughly what we're looking at. And when we began robbing it, we were primarily focused on the living room. And we noticed that the shelving there was very interesting. It was a sort of Scandinavian sort of metallic thing. And the cumulative weight of the you see? So that's what Putin's doing. And his rough position is, it's okay to repeat the point that the United States has been acting in an arbitrary way. But fundamentally, we want that point to be drowned out by, go on, please take Greenland if you can. We would love it, and we will benefit and applaud. So this is clearly Putin's position. This is his method of delivery. Hope this reaction video helped a little bit. Lots of love. Talk soon.